next up, we have Ruan King. As mentioned, Ruan is one of our experts on the customer support services program. But we've been working with Ruan for many years. He's helped us get products into markets all over the world. Ruan is a dedicated and highly motivated and hardworking professional. He has 17 years of experience in logistics. I can vouch for this as well. He is very resilient, often gets products to markets when we expect them not getting there from very, very late approvals. The last one was to a group to Singapore, and he managed to get products in a few days, which was we were all surprised when they arrived there and extremely excited about it. But yeah, he's super persistent. And yeah, a lot of experience, understands multiple products and across multiple industries, working across exhibition freight as well. You know, you're dealing with so many different types of products from so many different companies, different size companies as well, which is always quite challenging. And look, his key strengths is pretty much to provide expert advice for potential imports and exports of products. I'm going to hand over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen and then hand over to you, Ruan. Thank you for joining us again and giving us your insight.
Great. Thanks a lot, Rex. Thank you for the opportunity. I think I'm just going to jump right into it. Okay, so the documentation requirements, the FDA. Okay. So the importance of having the correct documentation. This is obviously very important. Typical documents that you do require if you want to export, that would be the commercial invoice, the packing list, certificate of origin, certificate of analysis, safety data sheet, certification testing, health certificates, and the FDA registration. Typical example of a commercial invoice. We did this at the previous webinar. I'm just going to run through these quickly. It's just got your basic, your shipper address, your consignee or your shipper's details, your consignee details, contact details, very important, your Incoterms, port of entry, your description. Very important is your harmonized tariff code, also known as a HS code. These are everything that you would need to put onto your invoice. The packing list, it's very similar to the details on the packing lists. It's very similar to the commercial invoice. Like I said, the same details apply, but you need to list the item spec per box. In a lot of cases, the people just list the items, but they don't break it down to exactly how it's been packed. So you need to list these per box and then list the length, width, the height to get the cubic meters, as well as the weights, and then a full description of the goods as required. It's also very important that these documents do tie up the weights and the descriptions. We've had cases in the past where goods were sent to the US and the original documents had to be provided. Unfortunately, on the description, there was a bit of a difference. Not too serious, but it meant that they had to issue new documentation. And like I said, the original documents were required. So it took a couple of days to send these by courier to get them to the US. And this led to unfortunate storage charges at the time. The certificate of origin, this can be obtained from your Chamber of Commerce. It certifies the country where or it's a document that certifies the country where the goods in a shipment were produced and is required for customs clearance in many international transactions. Again, this needs to correspond with your commercial invoice as well as your packing list. The certificate of analysis, this is the required for some of the food items, but mostly for your cosmetics as well. This is very important. It's just a document that confirms the quality and the composition of a particular batch or lot of goods, and is often required in industries such as the pharmaceuticals and food production. Yeah, I think it's important to note that the specific requirements for certificate of analysis may vary depending on the type of item, the intended use, and the applicable regulations. The FDA may also have additional requirements or documentation requests for specific product or situations. Importers should work closely with their suppliers and testing laboratories to ensure that the certificate of origin, the certificate of analysis contains all the necessary information which meets the FDA requirements. Just to mention this to you, I put two examples here of goods that we've exported in the past. This can be obtained from a testing laboratory like Merimex or Microchem, which is some of the local companies here in South Africa. We do get a lot of products that have been tested by them, and it basically gives you the breakdown of the testing of your product. Again, depending on the product and the appropriate paperwork, the testing laboratory can give you an indication on how long the process takes to finalize the certificate of analysis. It's difficult to give a timeline on this as it varies per product as well. So that's it for the certificate of analysis. For the safety data sheet. Now, the safety data sheet, it's got different headings or sections, but it comes down to the transport information. So when we send goods, depending what it is, in a case where it's cosmetics, 90% of the time, the airlines or the shipping lines would require the safety data sheet. The safety data sheet is very important because it's got the transport information on there in a case where the items might be considered dangerous goods. It needs to be dangerous goods packed into the appropriate boxes as per the regulations. And if a dangerous goods declaration is then issued for the specific product. So very important to have these as well. There's some of the certification testing. These are a couple of companies that provide testing, inspection, certification, and other quality assurance services for various industries and products. A certification test of goods is a process of inspection, testing, and verification, which ensures that the good meet a certain quality, safety, and regulatory standards. The safety data sheet can be obtained from some of the companies that I've listed here. But again, the timeline, depending on the product, the appropriate paperwork, these companies can give you an indication of how long the process takes to finalize the final safety data sheet. For FSSC, HACCP, that's more for your food items, but for your cosmetics, it also goes to the SGS, Intertech, and Bureau Veritas. Are just some of the companies that can assist you with that. From Coley's side, what she mentioned earlier about the the new regulations for cosmetics. Me myself, I was unaware that this is in the pipeline coming soon. So I think if you're planning on exporting any cosmetics items, it's important just to do a check on what exactly is required. Health certificates. This is in our country, in South Africa, it obviously may vary for other African countries, but these are typically health certificates that are required. On the left, we've got a phytosanitary certificate, which is mostly for tea products, and also your raw plant materials. But we do get these, we export a lot of tea as well, and this is basically one of the first certificates that needs to be applied for. Then on the right, this is from the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, which also lists the product being exported. And without this health certificate, it is nearly impossible to get it imported on the other side. Most of the time, this is a big requirement as well. So ensure your health certificates are applied for. These can be obtained from your local government departments, such as the departments I just mentioned. Now, I think the importance of the FDA for freight forwarder. This comes to, from what I've experienced, 4 different sections as well, which is firstly compliance. The FDA regulates the various aspects of food, drug and medical devices and other products. The certificate also outlines the specific items covered by the FDA, ensuring the compliance with relevant regulations. Now, for us as freight forwarders, we need this information. This is just to ensure that the goods being shipped align with the FDA's requirements. The documentation, which I just ran through now, and the customs clearance, again, the FDA registration, it's an essential document that will be requested by the customs authorities to verify the compliance of the goods. The shipment planning, different goods have different requirements and the restriction imposed by the FDA. So it's difficult to pinpoint this to one specific product. But just to give you guys an example, certain food items may require the specific handling, temperature control, or labeling to comply with the FDA regulations. By now, the FDA certificate or registration, it covers the freight forwarder, it covers the freight forwarder can plan and arrange appropriate transportation and storage conditions to ensure compliance and just preserve the integrity of the goods during transit. Then the risk management, non-compliance with the FDA regulations. Yeah, it's difficult because these can lead to different issues, delays, storage costs. We've seen fines implemented in the past, and even confiscation of your goods, or your goods need to be returned back to origin. But I think just by understanding the scope of the FDA, we can identify any potential compliance issues or risks associated with the shipment. It just makes it easier for us as well. If we've got the full information, I see there's quite a lot of regulations. Like I said, it varies from product to product, but the FDA registration covers and ensures the regulatory compliance, the facilitation of the customs clearance, and just to plan your shipment effectively and manage the potential risks so that you don't run into any issues when shipping your goods. What are the risks involved if my products do not meet the FTA requirements? So these are just few examples that we've had in the past, not all of them, but if your goods do not meet the requirements, like Polly mentioned earlier, there'll be a warning letter. It can lead to the products being seized or product recall, legal actions, import refusals, and the impact on your business. I think the impact on your business is very important, because in some cases you might put all your money into one order and thinking you're going to make it selling these products to the US, but if you do not meet these requirements, it might end up costing you your company as well. So just very important to look at that. Now, in the past, we've had some cases with labeling issues. This is actually one of the slides that Colia had in her presentation as well. But we had a case like this the other day where we sent a shipment, FH shipment to Dallas for food items. At that point, the exporter was unaware that there was a change from the original label to the new label. And they've been exporting to the US for many, many years. They also went through the FTA registration process, which according to them took them 36 months or three years to obtain. And they've exported to the US often, but unfortunately they weren't aware of the label that had to be changed. So when the goods arrived there, it was inspected by customs as well as the FTA. It did not meet the requirements, so it led to them having to put new labels, sending the labels over to the other side, going to the airport, putting the new labels on product by product. So that was a bit of an issue, because the goods ended up at the airline for close to 2 weeks, with quite a big amount of storage costs involved. So I think this is definitely a lesson that they learned. And I don't see them having that issue in the future. Just a few things that I saw as well, labeling gone wrong. Like Cody said, very important, as well as RG. It's so important to ensure that your labels are correct. These are typical examples of goods that have been imported in the past. But just the one on the right is a bit of comic relief with the misspelling of the word bird. So yes, these have been a few cases, like I mentioned, that we had before. And from our side, I think the important part is a lot of the guys, you get people, especially on social media, you have your product, you've got good marketing skills, and there's definitely an interest in your product as well. I think the good thing about the social media is that it puts you in touch with people all around the world. And we had a case the other day as well where there was a lot of interest in the US for certain food item that these guys wanted to export. They got the quantities right, and they had a buyer that wanted to buy the goods, but unfortunately for them, they never registered with the FDA. So they had their goods produced. They had the packing of the goods, everything was right until they got to the point where they actually had to export, and they got all these apprisals. So I referred them to the Registrar Corp as well, just to guide them on the import requirements for the US at the time. Then just here's my contact details. If there's any questions or anything that you'd like to ask, or send me an email offline afterwards, I'll be happy to assist you. And then if there's any questions or answers, please let me know.
Great, thanks, Ruan. Thanks for your time again today. And yeah, I've often said to Ruan, please, the key thing for people to know is actually what documents they have to have together each time they are going to ship something out, because whenever we are sending groups of companies overseas, it always comes down to a few of the guys holding everything back because someone hasn't got a document from their Department of Health, or hasn't sent the right information on the commercial invoice, etc. So yeah, always good to go through those basic requirements, because when you start exporting your product as well, if you don't have certain basic things in place, it's impossible for Ruan to do his job and get your product into market. Teresa, you've made a comment there. How would exporters be made aware of any US or FDA changes? I'm not sure if, Ruan, that's something that you want to try to tackle.
Yeah, well, Rex, I think look, it makes it a bit difficult. Obviously, we export a lot of products, different products. It's not like the manufacturers that they've just got the one product that they produce and export. So it's difficult to say. But what we usually do is, before we send a shipment to the US, so we've got partners or agents in different states in the US, and we try and get all or start with the commercial invoice and packing list firstly, so we know exactly what products are being sent. So we'll send this off to our agent in the US, who are quite aware of the latest changes, and then they guide us accordingly on what exactly is required. But just to add to the shipment that we had the other day, is with the change of labeling, it also comes down to your Incoterms as well. So with this specific company, we only had to, the terms were free carrier or FCA, so we only had to ship up to the airport. From there, the importer, they had their clearing agent that handles the import. But we exported it up to the airport. So I think in that case, you don't want to point any fingers, but it came down to their clearing agent, who was the one clearing the goods. They were where the goods were being sent there, but again, unaware of the changes. So we try and keep in close contact with our partners in the US as well, just to ensure that the exact product being sent does meet any requirements, or if there are any changes, they'll be able to assist us.
Great. Anything that you've seen on your side from sort of an FDA point, where someone may have the FDA certificate in place, their registration, they're ready to go, but there's something else that is as kind of, everyone thinks, you've got your FDA registration now, I'm fine to go. I'm going to start sending my product overseas. Anything that you've seen that's sort of jumped out of there once they're ready to export and they have that set?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we've seen cases in the past where the guys do register with the FDA, but after that, the HACCP or the FSSC the registration or approvals weren't in place. So they were under the impression, as soon as they registered for the FDA or with the FDA, that they're good to go. And until such time, luckily the goods did not depart from here as yet. And our agent warned us that it's all good and well that they've got their registration, but they haven't got any of the other requirements in place. So that made it a bit difficult as well, because again, the goods were packed, ready to go, and they were unable to send it until they sorted the rest of the goods out.
Okay, well, that's interesting as well. Yeah, you can't just rely on being FDA registered to, and that's the be all and end all of getting your products to the US. You have to follow other protocol as well and ensure that's all there.